Thank you so much. That was a fantastic introduction for all of us. And big congratulations to you people, the organizers and all the lovely people in your team to have created this platform for us to be able to come together as professionals and discuss a very important aspect of design, which is lighting. Yes, of course, lighting is a very, very important aspect of the spaces that we create and design. But what's even more important is the light within us. And that light, when we shine, it illuminates everything around us. And I think you people are really the people who don't just think and dream of light all the time. You actually spread it, and that's really what's important. I think all the panelists here, I can say the same to them. Ashmit, I'll start with you. Ashmit, I have always so admired you, not just as an architect or designer, but also as a great human being who has not just given his creativity to the profession, but you have given so much back to the, the profession of design by way of teaching, your classes and your students. They all are so gaga about you, and I'm so happy when I see them praising you. I'm one of them. Ashmit, light, as we know, is a very important part of anything that we do. But I think light is not understood the way it needs to be understood, particularly when it comes to our homes. You have a great portfolio. Homes, of course, has also been a great big forte for you. What do you think is happening today in the new normal, where we need to keep light in mind and the new trends in mind for a beautiful home that one can decorate without really having to get an interior designer into the picture?
Well, firstly, anything which has to do with vision has to do with light. So if we understand how focal points work, how we see things, how the eye works and how the brain works. So I'll take a back step and explain how we are able to see anything. The point is, the eye can only see what the brain can understand. So if somebody is from the button industry, they would not be able to see the shirt, but only see the button. By saying that, I'm also going to say that our experience is our greatest limitation, because we can only see or are interested in something that we already know. So when we talk about the focal point, color of lighting also makes a big difference, apart from what you want people to see. For instance, to talk about white lighting, the whiter it is and the brighter it is, okay, in terms of lumens and in terms of the color temperature, the more words per minute we speak at a higher volume. The body expands, we take more amount of personal space. So by volume also, I'm talking about a human being as an extended aura of a person. How loud is he? So if you look at a human being in plan, they will expand. The hands will take more space, the footsteps will become longer, voice longer, vision will also become wider. The opposite of that is also true, which means the yellower it is, almost amber, and dimmer it is, the less words per minute we speak at a lesser volume. And the body contracts, the hands come closer to the body, just about all of that happen. Everything slows down. Yeah? And that's one of the reasons why you will not find a fine dining restaurant in white and bright light. Because fine dining restaurant is supposed to make you consume the same thing in 2 hours what you could have done in maybe 20 minutes. It slows you down. So talking about homes, lighting has to be directly in conjunction with the mood that you want to create. For me, for instance, just a candle in the front, that would soothe me down, that will calm me down. But if I look at the light above, I don't know if you can realize that my pitch changes too, my voice becomes thinner. Biologically, the tonsil goes up. What we realize about lighting also is that you need more and more lighting when you're in a state of chaos.
Okay.
So when you're packaging bags or suitcases, that's when you need the most amount of light. So if you design lighting in a house considering the mood that you want to create, which is between amber and white, you can have a very controlled reaction.
Wonderfully put. Suparna, I'll come to you for the next question, and that is completely on the other side. Not homes at all, the offices and the other commercial projects that you do. Primarily, we are not using yellow lights. Mood lighting is not really the need of the client and the spaces that you design. However, we find that certain spaces do use certain different kinds of lighting and it's all not white light or task lighting as we call it. Tell us a little more about it, and what do you think we should keep in mind when we are designing a commercial space?
It's a large question. I mean, so on a very macro level, I mean, I'll try to answer this question. I mean, actually what Ashmit said is very true. We only see the visible spectrum, we see it because of light. But the odd part is we don't realize that only human beings actually see color the way we see color. Other creatures don't tend to see color at all. So it's quite interesting. So it's a function actually of the makeup of our own eye. Okay. So when we do commercial projects, color becomes a very vital part. It's not just about depths and shadows, which are very, very essential. So there are two aspects in commercial projects, which, when I'm talking commercial, I'm not talking about the interior. Mostly I'm talking about the sort of the public areas and the public face. So the public face, the landscape and the lighting becomes very, very critical. The functionality of that, and also the visibility of, say, a tall building or any kind of building from a distance. So this facade becomes extremely critical because it speaks. So I think the problem is when we look at lighting as a solution to speak. It's not. Lighting accentuates the dialogue that's already there. It's like the good language. It's like, just say you have shairi in Urdu. Urdu is beautiful, but shairi makes it
more pretty,
even more
yes.
beautiful. It sort of brings out the abstraction within it. So I think lighting is that element in the public sphere. It brings out the abstraction of the architecture, because in the public sphere you have kept in mind a lot of functionalities. You have to, how you light, how you enter, what's the imagery. We are always asked this question, what's the imagery? It's a sad question, because the imagery, I would answer simply, is what you see.
Correct.
What you feel is the imagery, and it's probably different for everybody. It's as simple as that. But usually we have to create this imagery, and the lighting is that element that allows us to. So we use light as in even colors, like that's where we start exploring color. So sometimes we add more blues, to create depths and longer lines. We accentuate the lines of the building, even though in the day the building will look very different from the facade point of view. In the night, it has to suddenly become another entity in itself.
Right.
So it's this little, the play of contrast, the play of even shadows. Like, he was saying a candle can make you feel very, soothing. So landscape lighting, if it's in your face, it feels like a terrible public park. So to make it look like a very sophisticated space, we undermine it, we put it down, we sort of tone it down. So even giving darkness of space in light is very, very important, especially in this kind of architecture, because otherwise we cannot bring out the contrasts. Sure. So like I said, it's both, it's functional, but you have to always understand its poetry.
Wonderful. Manish, let's take it from you to understand what is this poetry that we just heard Suparna so beautifully explain. Almost sounded like a romance with lighting. And you are doing multiple projects, and every project perhaps has different layers to it. Absolutely. In terms of lighting, and there has to be a perfect mix so that none of the one particular kind gets overbearing, and they have a particular balance to it.
Sure.
Tell us and walk us through this balance that you're constantly working on with light in your projects.
See, when we're working on any kind of a project, I think the start point, which is very important for any space, is the natural light, I guess. There are layers which get created. So when we start off with, there is a basic ambience which need to be created, so that ambient light which is there. So when you start planning, the first thing that comes to your mind is how to get natural light into the whole project, right, into each space, which is the most important, which is going to be the ambient. Okay. The next layer that you can put in with the same natural light is by probably putting a lot of screens, jalis and stuff, which give that light and shade effect, which gives the next layer onto the project. That natural light being there is for the day views in that sense, but as you move towards the evening again on the interiors, if you start to look at, then you get on to the lighting, the architectural lighting that you add into the space. That's the next layer that you need to put in, which gives you the ambience in the evenings. Then you go on to the decorative bit, the decorative light which adds on. So most of our projects, then we try to create a good balance between the decorative lights and the architectural lights. In our projects, the idea is again to have very clean ceilings. The lighting fixtures shouldn't be visible, and the source should not be visible. So there is a lot of indirect lighting that we use in our projects, and the decorative lights is the main lighting, which is in terms of chandeliers, in terms of lamps. That adds to the ambience of the space, like Ashmit rightly put across. Totally depending on what kind of ambience you're trying to create for a space, determines what type of lighting you use in there.
Beautifully put.
Yeah.
Manish just mentioned, Kuntal, that layers are important, and sometimes the same space when we are designing it looks very different during the day and has a different requirement at night, in the evenings, because there's the lack of natural light coming in. The same space has to be thought of in a different manner altogether. So Kuntal, how do you decide how much light and where to stop, and what kind of mood would it create, the same space during the day and during the evening, and how do you balance it all?
Thank you for getting this, and I'm so happy to have you, and the insight all of you with your experience have shared, it's so amazing. Being fortunate to study lighting as a subject in Milan from Nouveau University, and working there with some international lighting consultants, like 4 years back. When I came back, I realized only few architects has that importance for lighting. Rest are all copy pasting a setup, is what my perception has been.
Okay.
And I don't know how 25 years, 20 years back, how you guys have managed getting that thing in your projects, because now it's very easy with some amazing vendors and lighting consultants being around so easily. So of course, with a final study for the subject, we can actually evaluate as to what are we creating and how. With experience and with the studies, I have realized that lighting is the only thing that we can't touch. Maybe fabric, a veneer, anything that you are taking in a space, you can touch it. But lighting fixture you can touch, but what it is creating, you can't touch it. So having a right information about that very subject that you're placing in a property will define the whole make and break of that space, is what my perception is. And that of course comes from knowing about the lighting specifications and all. And then coming back to the question you've asked, layering is a common thing that we do. Day layerings are different, night layerings are different, and of course the temperatures and the dimmers and all those attributes to a space. I don't know if I'm correct.
No, I think you've said it beautifully well. We are always layering, yes. You know, with all our projects, it just can't be one kind of lighting, right, Priyanka?
Right.
We can't just be having either soft, spotlights or, wall scones or. Sometimes decorative lighting also adds so much to an interior, and probably becomes a very important element, not just because it's a source of light, but also because it adds value to the kind of space that we are trying to create in terms of aesthetics.
Correct.
What do you have to say for that, Priyanka?
No, I think you're right. If you look at ambient lighting for a space, right, it can be dim, it can be light, it can be blue, white, yellow, whatever. But for me, I don't like to layer too many layers. I think that's too distracting. So we do a lot of ambient lighting in the space. Anything that you can't see in terms of a light fixture is great. So, and then if you have like a really nice, like ambient light which you see over there, it's really nice, right? There are no scallops on the wall. Love that. But not necessarily in like chandeliers and all of that. It's too distracting for me. So I avoid them altogether. So like a little sort of different take on that. But if required, that's just like an added thing that you can do during dinner parties. But that should not be the main source of lighting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Ashmit, would you agree that the kind of interior demands the kind of lighting. I mean, it's well put by Priyanka that she probably doesn't like chandeliers, but then there could be an interior of, say, a heritage property or a hotel or somebody who loves classical interiors, even for their home. Chandeliers is a must, or a starting point, which becomes probably a very important aspect of the design in terms of the interior elements. So what do you have to say for that? I mean, do you normally educate your clients first in terms of what they should go for, or is it something that you first understand and then contribute to?
Well, space decides the kind of lighting. With the downlighters, you get a lot of shadows. Also, what happens is downlighters sometimes also add to visual fatigue because the light falls from the top, and eyebrows are usually ahead of the eye, and then we have eyelids, and then it causes a kind of flutter into the eye, so it causes a little visual strain. I feel that lighting up spaces from the wall is the best way to light it up because one, it cancels shadow.
Right.
Second, you have a fairly uniform amount of lighting which you can tone down, and then, which is the opposite way of how lighting is done, and then you use the downlighters to actually focal on whatever you want to see. So for instance, this room might have a general amount of ambient light, which will happen because of the wall light, because the wall or the floor, pedestal, anything. So it's going to bounce off the light onto the surface, it's going to bounce off the light a certain amount onto the ceiling, make the ceiling look or appear, you can now see it. So the spaces usually become taller and the floor also starts looking sharper. I realize that in India particularly, the problem happens that we're moving towards white flooring, and white flooring, and we're moving towards sparkling flooring. And we have a lot of dust. It will always remain. Also, the way the earth moves around, we grab a lot of Rajasthan and Gujarat dust. And then I also believe that more than 70% of Delhi is more than 35 years old. So it will be reconstructed. There will be a lot of construction dust. The downlighter, it will just sparkle it off. So it sometimes can become an occupation hazard, like a liability. So this would just tone it down and add to the softness. But it's a very classical way of treating a space. Classic or classical. And downlighters to hota hi nahi tha.
Suparna, talking about downlighters and talking about classical way of doing it all.
I'm from the old world.
Oh, you are from the. So let's talk about heritage this year. Since there is so much of admiration.
It's not so bad, you know. When we were in college, yes, because we are so modernist in our approach, right? We are stark and modernist, and that's the approach. But over the years, I realized, see, in India, there's something about iridescence, you know, light, which can happen. And sometimes, I'm not talking crystal. See, chandeliers are all types. They don't have to be
classical.
So there's the osler, you know, that everybody says, ye to osler ka chandelier lagaya hai. You know, that's separate. But chandeliers can be something which can be designed also. And anything that drops can be actually quite beautiful, because sometimes you want to see that little iridescent sparkle, you know. It happens.
And what's beautiful is if the light is pointing towards the ceiling and then it sparkles off, that's even better.
So it can actually have even down. It can even come down sparkling. That's what I'm trying to say. So, you know, and then certain parts of the floor can sparkle, and then there's a little dazzle. So imagine stardust, you know, on your. It does that. So sometimes it depends on what I'm trying to say is you have to give them a chance.
Yes.
Give them a little
Absolutely.
chance.
Try give them some chance.
Don't be the kind that banishes them, because you know. So I always say that, you know, when we started, we were very stark. I mean, you know, concrete was our
go-to.
You know, like brick and concrete. Hum to wo zamane ke.
Still
The
is.
problem is that we forget that in India we have a huge legacy of decoration, you know, and we have sort of shunned it aside because our education, and I must say it all starts there, says, nahi, ye acha hai, ye acha nahi hai. But we cut our umbilical cord too early. We didn't give it a chance. So now, as you know, one ages and, you know, से अच्छा वैसा वाला tile use करो जो थोड़ा उसमें है, then you realize नहीं, it can look interesting. It can. So concrete juxtaposed with something which is decorative starts looking
Phenomenal.
uniquely us.
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like us. It's like if we wear black and white every day as human beings. See, buildings are very akin to, he has been comparing them with this human eye and human biology. I mean, biologically, buildings are no different if you think of them biologically. So I'm saying, so that, like she mentioned that, light is something you can't catch, but light builds tactility.
Absolutely.
So think of it like that, and then I think spaces can, there's this wonderful shadow I've been noticing, on that arch. Have you noticed it? Sitting here, it's so distracting. I keep thinking, pata nahi kiska shadow hai, itna sundar hai. But it's like, what I'm trying to say is, that's what we can do. And it doesn't have to be invisible. I'm all for invisibility. I think it's really cool. But even the cloak types, पहन के आप बैठ जाओ, दिखे नहीं, कुछ भी बोलो, कुछ भी करो. But
I was saying Harry Potter right now.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm all for it. It's really nice. But I think sometimes the visibles, can be made. And you guys are, doing such interesting work. I mean, I'm sure you can take that old-fashioned chandelier to something
New. Manish, what do you have to say? How have your experiences been, especially with Suparna telling us about all the drama that we can create with lights and light fixtures?
It's a mix of what they've been saying, like I said. So as a start point, when I said the general ambient lighting is what, as I understand and as I try and do in my project, is something which is completely invisible in a sense that the fixtures are invisible. All of it is indirect lighting which is there, which creates that ambient. And like Ashmit said then, the focus lights, because again we've got so much exposure to light right now, what we had, like you said, 20 years back. So you've got the focus lights, you've got the down lights which are there, and you've got the ambient lighting which is there. So the ambient lighting, the first layer, again I'll come back to that, is that
these old people.
These old people.
So the ambient lighting is all but which is all hidden. Again, the fixture is not visible, and the general lighting levels which are required. Suppose we're sitting on a couch, there is a certain amount of light which is there. At the back, in that negative space, in that sense, if I may say, you don't need light, so it doesn't need to be evenly lit in that sense. So one is the ambient light where the fixture is not visible. That becomes like the first layer. Then you've got the second layer, which is like if you've got a wall mural happening or a nice artwork which is happening. So there is a spotlight which is trying to highlight that. And if the space demands, and if the volumes are there, and if the interior philosophy asks for it, then you can have a chandelier which goes into it. So it's ideally a combination of what everybody's been talking about, is what I think.
Yes, I think lighting is actually all about art. It's nothing to do with, I understand, Kuntal, you said you've studied lighting, and most designers I think don't get that opportunity like you have for being able to learn all of those things, but a lot of it also comes intuitively, I think, the amount of lighting, especially when it is about decorative lighting or, ambient lighting or anything that you need to highlight, probably also comes with some amount of experiences. And so what is your take on it? I mean, I'm sure you have clients who would say, oh, mujhe bahut well lit, I need a very well lit space.
That's a very common
Isn't that a thing? And then they are very worried why there is such little light fixtures or very small light points, or so how do you handle those situations?
So we still, again, we're coming to this age thing because it started there.
See?
So, no. So ma'am said that we are in that setup where if we say something, that is done. And we are still in that setup where we have to convince the client and prove it. Thanks to dialogues and other applications that we have, that we prove it through that. That okay, this is the lux and this is how are we placing light. I don't know, somewhere I strongly feel one thing that you said very rightly is it is so intuitive. There is something with an artist or in designers, we all are artists in our own spaces, and there is something that you feel, yeah, यहाँ पे ये सही लगेगी. Irrespective that dialects is saying you've done enough, but you still would want to do it there. And I don't know, I think I'm a very instinctive person, and I do. So there's this architect with me, and we were doing villa elevation, and I did lighting, lights, layers of lights on the elevation pot, and he's like, ma'am, ये बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं होगी. मैं कहा, lighting is never enough. I feel you can layer it, you can switch on, switch off, you have those scenes that you can set. So Diwali, Holi, you can have something else, and so the drama we can do now with automation, and all those plays that we can do with scenes and all. Yeah, that is how we create a space, inside, outside.
Yes. So Priyanka, when you're doing lighting for say residential clients, what about the mood lighting, etc.? Do you try to work with smart home systems from the very beginning while the project is coming up, and mood lighting therefore becomes an integral part of what you're designing? How do you go about it?
Of course, definitely. Like you get like a vendor on board immediately. Like before we even start our GFC set, we sort of make sure like our RCP and current RCPs along with the lighting plan. But then just sort of go back on the chandelier topic. I didn't mean I hate chandeliers. Just clarifying that. It's like a personal.
I have to send her nice pictures of nice ones.
Yes, I think we'll all do that.
Everybody here, please send her a picture of chandelier.
It's just a personal preference. I think because you work with like such like tight spaces, especially in like Delhi, Gurgaon, like not all of them are farmhouses, right? So when you do a chandelier, it like brings down the space. It like brings down the height of this living area, dining area, whatever that is. And secondly, I just prefer light I can't see. It's like a personal preference. I don't want to see, like, I don't like seeing this glare in my eye. That's where it comes from. So when we sort of start advising our client on like automation, how to go about smart home lighting, all of that, it becomes very important to have it from stage one, so they're aware of A, the cost, and B, the effect it can have on the overall space. And secondly, I think it's very important to make the clients understand that सिर्फ COB नहीं है world में. Everyone thinks COB or cove lighting, and that's it. So I think that's where we sort of try and bring in that sort of knowledge to the clients. And when they start going down that path, it's like a rabbit hole. It's never ending. And like that is about 3-4 months to close with the clients. Yeah.
Ashmit, today I find the trends going from having ornate, very expensive light fixtures, even with very, very high-end projects, where the concept is now moving to less is more kind of a thing. Maybe few fixtures, maybe expensive though, very expensive. Some of these simple fixtures may seem simple but are actually very, very expensive. But however, they are probably not as many and as loud as the earlier ways of doing a so-called defined interiors, which people would conceive as a very expensive interior. What do you have to say for that?
So for general everyday, you should invest in the best CRI that you, color rendering index, that you can. Funny enough that a bulb is 100 CRI, the best LED is about 95. So let's say for everyday life, you need a very high quality light, which makes it look beautiful. The time when people really need a lot of light is when they're in a hurry. Always. If you reflect back on when is it that you truly needed all the light, even the curtains to be out, mostly when you're packaging bags, suitcases. So for that, because you're not going to turn those lights on at all the times, you can probably have those ones, a much cheaper one. That's a way to just overall bring a kind of value onto it. So every day there is no compromise, and when you need them, you'll end up saving money.
Absolutely.
So it could be.
Okay, so Suparna, you're definitely not packing your bags. I mean, quite in the literal sense.
I agree. I mean, I think generic lighting is separate, and automation actually has really enabled it. Even old people can.
Of course,
but so we use automation a lot, and I like the idea of setting scenes, and then there's a general which is on for the client most of the time, and there are certain scenes that you create based on what the client requires and what the requirement is. We even do that for facades, by the way, or even for as much as one would do it for art inside. But I find there is a great emphasis in India on overlighting.
Absolutely.
We tend to make a bling fest, I mean, generally, I'm talking about the public areas. we have this tendency to go overboard. So there is, and it's not great. I mean, environmentally, it's not great. You know, it's very hard at that time to even explain to a client, look, it's not about the lux level of that light. It's about what you're doing to every creature around you.
Absolutely.
It's not human beings only that occupy space. There's tigers and there's, I'm just joking about that, but you understand, there are dogs and cats and whatever, and very excessive light sometimes, and especially birds and it causes damage, and people just don't think that far. It's so hard. I mean, you're talking about that clients, we can say, yeah, we can, but when we start talking to them, chiriya ke liye acha nahi, they look at us and say, kya baat kar rahe ho? But you have to understand that if वो चिड़िया को problem हो गया, फिर eventually आपको ही होगा, because वो पूरा ecosystem. So it's this whole understanding, that as one progresses, one has to bring to the table, and it's very difficult. Even sometimes you want to highlight a certain thing, you have to take care. Should you uplight a building? Now that's a very dangerous thing to do. Most people love to do this uplighting. It's the worst thing you can do, because you're causing so much light pollution, and we are heavy into light pollution. We overlight. So in some areas it will be like dead. There will be no light because there's no electricity. That's a separate story. But otherwise we tend to overlight it. I mean, you see any monument in India, it's so hard to understand why it needs to pop. Why can't it just be slow?
Sucking,
Like what he said, when you want to just breathe and you want it soft and you want it slow. Why don't you allow us to breathe?
Hence the indirect lighting.
So
that's
Manish,
why the indirect lighting. Nothing to be seen.
I mean, isn't that like when you see, very rarely, like a Humayun's tomb is probably one of the rare ones where you say, acha chalo, acha hai. The others you feel like, oh my God, it's a monument. You have to do that. Why?
It's a Diwali. It's a Diwali.
So, but tell me, with your experiences, Manish, taking forward what Suparna just mentioned, she's pretty much talking about how sustainable we can be with our lighting system, which also not just makes the whole place very loud, creates pollution if it's over the top, and also definitely about electricity conservation and so much of wastage and all of that. Tell me, Manish, is it important therefore to bring in a lighting consultant or a lighting expert, especially for projects of the kind that Suparna just mentioned?
Absolutely, absolutely. A lighting consultants become, like she said, again, 20 years back, 25 years back when we started off, there were very few internationally lighting designers which were available. Right now there are a lot more people who have the knowledge and who can help it, and according to me they're very important for any kind of a project, and we generally tend to get them on board at the concept stage only and use them for landscape lighting, facade lighting, interior lighting, all the aspects of the lighting in there. One, like she was mentioning, the quality, the kind of product that you actually end up using, the amount of number of fixtures that you end up using, and third, the aesthetics or the kind of ambience that you're trying to create, they can help out on all of those. It's more like that you've got the vision, but you might not have. She's been lucky, she's studied lighting as a subject per se. We more intuitive in those sense, and through experience we've learned, or through our thought process we know that this is how we would want to light up our spaces. So we've got the vision there, but a lighting designer then definitely is required to get in the technical aspect of lighting into. So yeah, very
absolutely. But you know what, something strange, Manish, and I'll ask Kuntal this to answer perhaps, is that when the moment we talk about a lighting designer in any project, the client is like yet another angle. First you talk about an architect, then you have an interior designer, then we have to go for a landscape guy, now the lighting. What is going on? So I mean, is it something that I've come by, or do you think it's a common problem?
When you already have an electrical
consultant.
Yes, the same thing.
Yes. Why can't they do it? To begin with, they feel that the architect should anyway do it. If they hired an architect, he is supposed to do the landscape and the electrical and the lighting and everything else put together, even hang your paintings on the wall. Now, how do you combat those things? What is your experiences?
way back my father said once that abhi aap pad lo jo padna hai, then there would be a time about specialization. And now I see it coming where everything is specialized. Now we have interior stylists also who would tell you where to put what.
And decorators as well.
And decorators. So, but I think now the general market is also changing and they value every separate entity that is coming on board for their project. So, because I am lucky enough that with my company I could manage to go outside and study and come back, I can actually now support that thought that they have, and I emphasize that it should just not be MEP. It is lighting also. You just can't fund all the money there on the structure and not taking care of the light. So I think educating the client is the only thing that we do. And of course I think every choice, especially to the clients that I am catering or a company is catering, revolves around money. So there's no budget home that we're doing at the moment, where there's this fancy clients who just don't ask about the money. I'm still looking for such clients. I don't know if they exist, but yes, when they talk, and if we tell them bifurcate as to this is the investment that we're doing now for this many entities that will be involved in your project, then I think they understand. Okay.
To my mind here, I would like to add, with my experiences in this space of design, is that because there are so many specialized manufacturers and of light fixtures, and especially even companies like this, I think it's very important for them to have a special cell to help designers, handhold them and be able to take them in a very, very inclusive manner with the client, with the designer, the architect, everybody together, the manufacturers if possible, the vendors, everybody to be, you know, having a, and then come up with the final solution. Don't expect the designer to all give it all, because sometimes there are restrictions in terms of knowledge and availabilities, you know, at lux levels and lumens and this and that, and you know, of course the psychology of the light itself, which Ashmit told us about. You go loud with white and you go low with yellow. Thank God it's yellow, so I'm talking softly.
So I think I want to add that such experience centers really help us and convince the client what are we wanting them to have. Yeah. You know, earlier I don't think, like I have seen such coming up now these days, the experience centers, and then when they are so in awe of the spaces and they're like, हाँ बस ऐसा बना.
This is exactly.
So that is this type of a setup that these guys have created has helped us getting them to that portion where they can take the decisions so quickly.
Yes, that's true. I agree. So Priyanka, tell me, with your experiences, do you actually end up bringing clients to experience centers, or you know, actually educate them first with the kind of fixed fittings that you propose to use, and what the impact will be before you actually, while you are at the drawing board stage?
Of course, much before that. In fact, we bring them on board when they've hired us, and like we have this sort of phase in the middle before we start doing drawing, doing the concept phase. We make them meet all vendors. Like they say, this is out there, go educate yourself. This is a lighting consultant, this is XYZ, this is like what you can do for sound, this is what you can do for like furniture. Okay. So they understand the pricing also in the market, right? So they don't come to us like, itna mehenga kaise? They're aware. They're already going to those places, and that's more like a marketing strategy on our part as well. They're aware of, listen, a CUB se 600 mein nahi aati hai. There are multiple levels of like layers of pricing as well. Yeah, so we send them to stores, we come along, we sort of understand how it works and how everything works. Very important.
Great.
Also, I think what it does is as a client, right? We're into this industry and we're designing every day on a daily basis. But the client's not thinking about projects on a daily basis.
Correct.
So once they start going to these places, their mind starts to roll towards the products and process, and then they can actually when you actually present them with your concepts and your ideas, becomes a little easier for them to relate to it. Oh, this is what we've seen there, this is what we're talking about, and yes, this is what I like. So it helps them select much better once they've done a little Reiki of all of these shows and stuff.
And also just like taking off on that, it also helps them, but like sometimes be counterintuitive, because once you're like on the GFC stage, so the construction stage, and I'm like, acha, aaj main dekha tha na wahan par store pe, let's do it that at the last minute. So it can like also
that
like
helps greatly.
It can
so
combine
visually
with
they can identify and keep it in mind, and there's a recall factor with whatever they have seen. So and they think that it could be applied to their
But also
spaces.
it's counterintuitive, right? So they can come back on site and change it last minute. वो देखा था मुझे पसंद नहीं आया था, but now I want it again, so he come back and bite you in the ass. Like, oh shit, I told him too much.
Yes.
Now he wants the same thing that he did not like 3 months ago. Now he wants it again.
Oh, that I guess happens to
With us.
All of us have probably gone through there, where the client has gone for a dinner and then suddenly next morning calls up and says, I want that kind of a thing which I saw there, where maybe the spaces are different, the scales are different, the whole concept is different, but he still wants that. So yeah, I guess that's part of the flip side of our profession. But I guess I'm sure we can all navigate through that. Ashmit, tell me, there's so much happening in this industry with new fixtures coming up, different kinds of things, almost every day. How do you keep yourself abreast with all the newer things and the newer technologies and everything that's being launched all the time?
Well, for us, I would look at the purpose of the lighting first, and then choose what direction to take. And then the luminaires itself there are certain lights which are good for certain things. Like when we talk about retail, for instance, if I give you an example, 10 years ago, there's a bulb called power lamp, which has a very specific purpose, versus HDMT or CDMT, versus a QR111 versus a regular MR16 versus an LED or a COP. So if you know the purpose of what kind of light you want, what kind of shadow you want, LEDs typically create a lot of shadow. So if you need an environment where you need to produce a kind of shadow, then one would research in terms of what kind of LEDs you can do. So in some ways it's form follows function. But I would like to also add to why in India people prefer a lot of lighting. It's a social evolution, because Indians are used to tube lights.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Tube lights have no shadow. Tube lights bounce off light from everywhere.
Absolutely.
And we are used to it. If you look at it in context to Europe and America, they were bulb based, lesser amount of light. So they've socially evolved to have lesser amount of light. Also, the spaces would usually be more gloomier if we talk about most part of Europe. India is a very bright place. Okay. And the preferences change if you go to east part of it at the same time, which is also a kind of myth that you need white lighting for study, right? It'll come across very often. Again, because they're coming from their experience of a tube light, ki zyada roshni hogi to behtar hoga. But the fact is, a basic research tells us that the best libraries in the world, the best bookstores in the world are yellow light and dim light white.
True.
So, and I'm not saying you need to give your life for research, but maybe a 20-minute quick walk to something, so revisiting something in your mind gets you the answer. And if you tell to the client this, then you never need to convince, because then you're suddenly not on the other side of the table. You're both on the same side of the table talking about the same experiences.
Very true.
When we would do lighting, we to ask a question, if anybody is left-handed in the house, so that when we're doing the lighting, we need to ensure that there is no shadow when they're reading or writing. And that also governs what kind of light. Then it cannot be an LED, for instance. Right. It needs to be something that is dispersing.
Wow.
Can I just add something?
Yes, please go ahead.
A lot of spaces till now, we still do parent room in white light. So in most of the client spaces where the decision maker is the second generation for their elderlies, they still say यहाँ पे tube light लगाओ या white light दो. Irrespective of the complete setup, the villas being absolutely in warm lights and other setups. But the parent room, because the generation that you said, they are so used to tube lights that we still cater to that requirement. And that has been so common in our current clients.
Very true. Priyanka, what about you? Have you had experiences where there's a home that you have to create where there is the parents and the second generation and the third, and you're doing dramatically different kinds of spaces in the same house for the 3 different generations?
Never.
Okay, you've not had that chance yet.
Touch wood, no, we don't.
Any of you have had that?
We've done that.
Okay, Ashmit, let's hear your experience on something like this.
I consider myself extraordinarily lucky, that we land up doing a lot of joint family projects. It makes it partially easy for me because I come from a joint family. I still live in a joint family, both maternal side, paternal side, where everybody has such a different opinion about everything. But I'll also switch off from lighting and talk. The point is, everybody wants a great house.
Correct.
Everybody wants a great destination. Their journeys might be very different. So if we land up understanding as designers, sabko bahut acha lagna chahiye. You listen to all of them.
True.
And what I personally like to take on me is that not only, again, the destination has to be beautiful, the journey has to be beautiful. किसी को ऐसा ना लगे कि उसकी बात नहीं रखी गई.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
Right?
yeah.
And if I talk about lighting, yes, parents need more white lighting. So what we would typically do in that case, do the downlighters in white and do the cove in yellow.
Yes.
And do all the decorative lighting in yellow.
Yeah.
So when the parents would move into their room or see their room, it's white light. Okay, they're happy. Now you gently condition them softly and educate them without educating them in terms of what works better. When they themselves see that every color looks better, with lesser amount of light, there is lesser amount of fatigue, but there is more amount of visibility. They don't want to be educated. Nobody wants to be educated. But it's like, it's what experience centers do.
Absolutely.
You don't educate to them, or I would say in the retail, we do a lot of retail design. So you don't sell to them, you help them buy.
You
So
nudge
then-
them.
Yeah.
It's
So
like a
then the
nudge.
store becomes a silent salesman, and the salesman now becomes a consultant, so that their advice can be taken.
Beautifully
Very
put.
nice.
Very
Suparna, any experiences with?
Yes, lots.
Okay.
All
share
good,
something.
all good, all
Okay.
good. So, in fact, like he said, I'm like, you know, we're lucky we get to work with. See, in India, we still have sort of co-sharing
family.
and
Yeah.
and
Joint family
families
homes.
that live together, even
Right.
if you know, even if it's floors, even if it's rooms, and so I think the key here is not to discriminate, like say, okay, this is your area and your area, and and especially lighting is the most beautiful tool to bring everybody
everything
together.
together.
So in fact, it's easier than flooring, trust me. So that over there, people are far more opinionated, and lighting, when we mix it up, so I mean, like what he said, you use your downlighters successfully in one color, and then I like using lamps. And they give really nice. There's a warmth
Light at
that
the
comes
right
with
level.
the lamp, and the light is just at the level
At the
of
right
your
level,
face.
yeah.
So otherwise, like I was saying, the shadows on your face when it comes from the top can make you look really mean. Like it does. Even under or over. Try it with a torch. It's scary. And so you want that kind of softness, and they appreciate it. So there is, there is a marriage of various worlds in a home, because homes age and evolve, and lights have to be part of that evolution. So that, like he said, when you're sitting, you're studying, you're writing, you're reading, you're watching TV, the kind of light that you want is very different. I mean, and people use the same room for sometimes
Different
for reading,
purposes,
sometimes for watching TV, sometimes for just hanging around playing a game.
So the same person actually would want different kinds of lighting
even
within
it
the
doesn't have to
day,
be-
depending upon his or her activity.
It doesn't even have to be
Different
different
people.
ages of the family. It's
Correct.
It depends on what you do. So I think lighting is very critical, and like you said, the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. So you get them to places like this and show them, but it's also dangerous. Because sometimes, I mean, I'm just saying that, because sometimes they prevent you from experimenting because it's already there, So you, at least I think there's there's a huge element of experiment which needs to come in to the kind of work that we do, because we learn every day. I mean, I learn every day. I mean, however old I learn, every day I learn something new. I learn a new kind of light fitting, new acronym, and anything. It's exciting. So, but it can't happen if I'm not enthusiastic and waiting for the new. I find experience centers are super because they allow us, but they all should, like this, should have a place to experiment also.
Yeah.
What is on the wall is great. What you see is great. There should
And
be
you can
one
go and create
area
more things.
where you should be allowed to come in and say, ye rakho, acha, aisa kaisa aayega. You don't know, because we don't know. And as architects, we don't have that space of physical experiment. We have a software.
Correct.
And it's very different when the client sees it physically.
Yeah.
It's just very different. It's like watching a fabric.
Just
When
a
you buy
question,
online, you
yes.
buy all of us.
And when it comes
bought
home.
clothes online. Oh God, what
Just
a
a question,
disaster
though.
sometimes.
Just a question here. Have you like a problem with a client when they come in towards a final space and you see the lighting and everything? Have they been like, oh, like amazing, or have they been like warm, like lukewarm about it?
What, come into an experience center?
No, like once like we like
Project.
done the spaces and everything, and like since like you like let your
I'm
clients sort
one
of.
of those people who always gets the wow factor.
I'd like to bring in, I'd like to bring in the people from the experience center here to answer this question. So there's somebody here from the experience center with a mic.
Yeah, it's nice.
So, hi. Suparna has this beautiful thought, and we thought we'll bounce it off to you, is that places like this, which is about experiencing light, when we bring in clients, or we even the specifiers or the architects, designers come together, there could be a possibility of having a space where we could also experiment with the kind of products that you already have. So would you think that would help in terms of creating new products or adding value to what you are selling?
Absolutely, we can do that. Like, we would change the beam angles inside the product. We would want to see different color temperatures. Normally, we have a lot of fixtures. So if I talk of Nouveau, this particular facility, and we have one in Mumbai, we have over 2,000 plus samples. So that's a massive sample base that we have. If I talk of downlights only, we have 10 different types of downlights, wherein we would talk of tiltables, we would talk of the ones which comes with different types of accessories, tunable downlights. So it can easily be done. Furthermore, if you want further customizations, those are possible looking at the size of the project, to be honest. If we are wanting just one or two fixtures, that would be tough for the manufacturers. Ultimately, it would increase the cost. That's the main. But yes, it's always better to kind of play with fixtures, see how it turns out, and it can easily be done.
Wonderful.
Any kind of fixture we can play around with.
So I think the point is to make these kind of experience centers not as whatever you've envisaged and you've put the kind of lights in, but to make it more interactive in terms of people can come in and they can actually ask
Even
for
if it's
different
one small
configurations
space.
of the same
That would be
light
great.
to get the desired effect.
I totally agree, because lighting the same fixture would kind of feel differently or kind of behave differently in different environments, right?
Yeah.
So having a fixture or having a specifier or basically even a client to see different experiments, how light plays a different thing is something which is very interesting. This is specifically the reason why we got the dark room out there, wherein you can kind of actually experiment. As he said, we have a huge sample base. Experimentation, of course, is to you guys, right? You guys need to experiment. I mean, we've already done our bit, but at the end of the day, you guys would really need to experiment for sure.
Correct.
Because, yes, the same light would behave differently in so many different formats, for sure.
No, so
I remember when I came to the
samples here. Suppose we bring in, like sometimes it happens, we don't know how it's going to bounce off a certain material, or we don't, and we have to call. So it would be so nice if we could bring in a little
slab of stone.
samples and stand there and say, "Acha, is pe kaise lag raha hai?" Because even we don't know. Even we need to educate ourselves before we
the
talk
fabric that
about
you're using,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, so we have. So
And sometimes it's so glossy, at the end of it you're like, oh God, what did I do,
So we've kept the space very, very
too bright.
Neutral.
flexible in that way. You can experiment a lot out here.
Yeah, because everybody can't do automation, is what I'm saying,
I would
Some
go a
clients
step further and say
don't
that you
go
guys should also, after understanding the project, suggest, because at the end of the day, you are into the thick of the thing and you understand the pulse of the products and the kind of lighting that you think, after understanding the project, will actually add value to it. So therefore, I think it's a very hand in glove situation where I think people like you and us should all work in tandem.
Totally.
And there is a disconnect here,
Yes,
You know,
because I know what you're talking about. Because end of the day, it's your architecture, your interior that we need to bring into light, right? And if we are not doing it as per your thought process, forget it. I mean, I can flood it, I can light it, I can do whatever I think. But then it's your creation. Right?
No, actually it's a collaboration. That's what I want to say, because it allows us to technically be a collaborate? Because we don't know.
I want to add something. You know, we closely work with such agencies where we have been. They have submitted a lot of samples with the light fixtures and everything.
Right.
So we knew where are we going, and it was a collaborative setups where we were, you know, hand in hand. कि मैम ये नहीं ये कर लो, because in my previous project I did this and I've experienced this, so how about trying this? So we did it, okay, you know, let's try this. So I think such setups are working nowadays with
No, I'm saying, but it allows us to physically come
And
get
see
this
the-
The client needs to see it.
like I said, the proof of the pudding is in the
The client also
I don't know what it looks like
wants to
till the
understand
time.
what kind of value it's
It's
adding.
true, we never know.
True.
We
Right.
are always like waiting at the end. Okay, you know.
I get your
You know
point
what
now.
I'm trying
Yes.
to say? I'm saying, what if we know before? What if it also, you know, other people come in, somebody walks in, you know, he's there also, he comes in here and he says, oh, you're trying this, so maybe you should try that. How's that looking? And then suddenly we come up with something
Totally different.
Totally.
Yeah.
because
Maybe.
That's definitely
I
a
mean, if it's
possibility. So
innovative,
let us hope
you
that
know what
we
I
are.
mean?
Yes, I think
Yeah.
we collaboration is the only way forward, and
Yes.
definitely for lighting, for any other products, be it flooring, wall coverings, everything, even the fabrics and everything. Lighting, of course, is a very, very integral part of the design process, and I think sometimes we ignore it, thinking that, oh, we just need to put some, you know, spotlights and a couple of, you know, decorative pieces, and we are sorted at the end of the day. But that's actually not true, as you know. And of course, as I must say this, and I think a lot of people in the audience are also watching, is that not everybody can really engage a lighting designer. So one doesn't have to worry, because after listening to a panel discussion like this, one wonders, oh my goodness,
You know, honestly, after
how do I do
I
it?
guess you guys are decent enough to carry that, you know, shoe yourself, right? So, I think, you know,
Like what?
I
don't understand.
Right? In the sense, you guys have way more information about lighting. What Ashmit was speaking.
No, like we really, okay, at least I know I don't. That's why like we like sort of consult with like designers and all of that to sort of help us do up a space that like looks decently
So
well
that's
at night.
exactly what she was putting in, right? So, that
So we are all learning.
Yeah.
We are all learning
And
here,
she needs to know
and
about
we need to
chandeliers.
learn more. I'll take some quick questions from the audience if they have some.
I'll just pass this.
Priyanka, I believe you have a strong preference to Bauhaus school of thought. I was wondering, how does light particularly tie into it?
Wow, you're listening to done your research. Sorry, can you repeat that? Bauhaus and what?
I believe you have strong
Yeah.
preference towards Bauhaus school of thought.
Yeah.
I was wondering,
Yeah.
how does light specifically tie into it?
That's a thinker. Do you not feel when you sort of go into a space, you see something that's like very structural, or you see something that's like very, very boring, and like there is no light? Either way, it won't make a difference, right? Versus, let's say you go into a town, let's say in New York, and you walk in, there's like a huge sort of sculpture over there, there's light falling on it. It makes a difference. The same with any sort of school of thought, it doesn't matter what it is. If there is something that's like sort of like gives preference to a particular kind of fixture or sculpture or piece of furniture, it makes a difference. That would be my sort of take on that question.
Very well put. Any other question?
Yeah, hi. Just to start with my question, I'm talking about design or lighting, and I started from anything else as possible. So my question would be more towards where the future of, I guess, light design is. From what I've understood, where the industry is going towards, say, high residencies, heritage properties, and things of that nature. Breaking away from that, how would you see this particular field fitting in like a commercial sort of office space? Because most office spaces that I've seen, at least in the Delhi NCR region, their only job is to put bright white lights into your employees.
Who would like to take this up question? Okay, Suparna, please answer.
Not true.
Yeah.
Okay,
So he's talking generally,
yeah,
I guess.
I think office spaces, in fact, are very conscious of the kind of lighting that we use. In fact,
Yes.
when we do office spaces specifically, it's the easiest because the briefs are the most clear. Lux levels are decided to precision points.
Yes.
And anti-glare and
And
Exactly.
when we do we are able to, today with automation and sensors, we are able to control even the kind of lighting in spaces, how spaces switch on and off. Of course, sensors have some issues. I mean, we have clients who come and say, you know, I just sit and keep waving my hands. And I was so still, the light went off. You know, I was reading and I was so still. And then I suddenly realized because the sensors there, so then you have to start. So we keep telling them some dance moves are in order in office spaces. Good for the back, you know. But yes, generally office spaces, like I said, most office spaces, especially which are geared towards either, you know, any kind of human interaction or resources and people with even software, they're very, very conscious. In fact, it's the light, the kind of light we have to specify is very critical, because especially the ones that go 24/7. Because we have to actually do a great balance between, you know, the heating up of the fitting. You know, we have to figure this out so carefully. So sometimes we do a dual. So we actually, I know. Can you imagine? We actually thought of that. So we actually sometimes put different two fittings. You know, like the central fitting is a different fitting, and the side fittings are different fitting. So they're able to switch it off, because, like, you know, Ashmit was talking, there's a lot of light fatigue. They're watching screens. Correct. You know, and you have to be very careful not to over light it from the top. Correct. So it's in fact that's one of the easiest lighting solutions in office spaces.
With Suparna's experiences, she finds it the easiest. It's not so true. One needs to learn and grow and kind of evolve in it. So yeah, you will get there. But there are a lot of great people like Suparna and other engineers and lighting experts who will help you through this whole journey of learning all of this. So don't worry. It's all very, very 2 + 2 = 4 kind of situations when it comes to you know, creating the kind of lighting that you're talking about. Okay, any other question? Any other question? Okay, anybody else? Some other question? I think we don't have any more questions here. So, Ashmit, one last thought. Oh, we have a question there. I'm sorry.
What's the difference between lux level and contrast in residencies?
Contrast.
So we can't hear you.
Sorry.
Ashmit will answer this question for you.
He's the light techie.
Lux level.
Lux levels and contrast.
Okay.
While doing residences specifically.
Okay.
Over to you, sir.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Lux level is the quantity of light.
Yes.
Okay. And contrast is the difference of color between two things, which could be contrast in black and white, or contrast between dim light and bright light. So they're two very, very different things.
And both are equally important to keep in mind when, you know, to balance out any of the.
Of course.
It's like X and Y axis, and one is you know, that's what I'm saying. One gives depth, one gives
the yes.
Yeah, but if you're going to put same amount of lux level on something which is white and black, irrespective of the lux level, bright or less, the contrast will remain the same. Okay, it's just the amount of light. So lux level is nothing but the quantity of light.
One more last question. All right.
So I have a question. For instance, you have a client who is light sensitive. So what kind of approach of lighting you will follow in that space?
Manish, why don't you answer this?
Light sensitive in terms of he is wanting a lot of light, or like generally people who want. So which is to do, which is what I started off with doing a lot of diffuse light or indirect lighting, which could be in terms of coves, it could be in terms of hanging fixtures which are just uplighting the ceilings to bounce off from surfaces. So try and do as much of indirect lighting so that there is no glare, there's no direct glare out of it, and there's a nice ambient lighting which is created in the space.
Thank you.
So that was the last question that we've taken from the audience. I know there are many more, but because of paucity of time, I think we will need to wind up this great conversation that I'm quite enjoying. I hope you guys are too. Ashmit, one last thought before we move on to Suparna.
Sum of all things. Well, use lighting to create an emotion. And as long as you stick to that, which is between yellow and white, you can't go wrong. Because at the end of the day, the clients are not really keen in terms of any of the technical data. But if it makes them feel good, that's good. One tip I can give you, if you want to look at the blemishes and the cracks in the skin, then you use white light. And if you want to use or see the beauty of the skin, you go to yellow light. Yellow light is beautiful, white light is daft. It is true. So use it as per to your advantage.
Fabulous.
Done.
Suparna.
Okay. I don't have too many words of wisdom. Never had wisdom. I would think that the biggest teacher is natural light.
Absolutely.
Okay. So if you ask me, a lot of things that we know we say instinctively, but it's what we are actually seeing, observing and absorbing. If you really want to understand what kind of light you want, just look out. You know, the sky has a million shades, clouds sometimes shield. Have you ever seen the light when it comes through clouds, especially on a rainy day? And you just see 2 streaks or 3 streaks. It's like somebody designed it.
So many times.
Or the ripples on a water, water when the light shines and you can see only just the part which is the curve, not beyond it. Or a leaf, have you ever seen the underside showing? Because when you stand in your office and you're really scratching your head and there's this plant or a tree outside and the light comes through it and you almost feel like there's revelation. so it's this, those moments actually can be captured in light which is not natural. That's design actually. At least I think that's design. So if you can chase shadows, you can find, just be that shadow chaser, and you'll learn lighting. It'll come.
Manish?
Light only where it's required, right? The idea is not to light up everything. It's not an ambient lighting, right? Light to highlight whatever you want to highlight in a space in terms of an interior. And like she was putting it, natural light is the start point. That's what you need to focus on when you start any kind of design. If you've done that correctly, you've done most part of it correctly, I guess.
How about you?
पुराने ज़माने में एक ad आता था ना, वो center पे दिमाग की बत्ती जला.
Kuntal, your turn.
I always feel that now the time is where we feel that we know everything. But I think we should go to the experts, educate ourselves when it comes to lighting, and it should not be general. And I always tell all my teammates also that educate yourself and understand it from an expert. That is how we can evolve in lighting, and lighting is so important. It should get that value that it deserves.
Wonderful. How about you, Priyanka?
To sum it up, don't use white light. Correct? That's what I've understood from.
Okay.
Don't use chandelier.
So that was
No white light.
I think that's been a lot of learning. For me, for one, I can say that I have learned so much from each one of you today in this panel. Yes, Priyanka says no white light. So does Ashmit, but I'll tell you something, if you have to make an Instagram reel, white light is the go-to. Anyhow, so I think Suparna, Manish, all of you have really put it beautifully well that Kuntal, that it's nature that teaches us what light is all about. It's always so important to go back to nature, because nature is what helps us understand and appreciate light and shadow. Nature helps us appreciate how a particular thing, responds to a particular kind of light, and how it therefore impacts us as psychologically as people. So I know it comes through ages, but there are moods, romantic moods and romantic lighting. When you're angry and you see something in a film, you see a certain kind of light. The lighting of rain and thunder gives you a different kind of an emotion. Everything has an impact when it comes to light, and it has its own language. how we use it in our everyday life is something that needs to be evolving individually with us as designers. And you don't have to really go to a design school, even though for larger projects we definitely want to bring in consultants and experts, because that's the only way a project would move forward in the positive manner. In our own spaces, be it our homes or spaces that we occupy for work, let us just design it the way our heart tells us to. Because a lot of time, our intuition will tell us how much light we really require, how much light and what kind of light will really create the kind of mood that we need to and we deserve to work in and stay in. So with that, I would say a big, big thank you to all these lovely panelists today. And a big congratulations to the team of Innovative Lighting. Thank you for inviting us, and I hope that we interact more on various aspects of light and our projects in the times to come.
Thank you for making the session
Lipika,
so
you've
fun.
been wonderful.
Yes, it really made it
This is
easy.
to you.
Thank you. Really?